Hello everyone, welcome to Manocha Academy. In today's video, we are going to talk about three theories about the evolution of life on Earth. These three theories, 50 years apart from each other, but so beautifully evolved in their complexity of understanding but ease of explanation of the theory of evolution. We are going to talk about the Lamarckian theory, the Darwinian theory and the mutation theory. I am going to break them down into their postulates and make you understand with examples how easily, even in the 1800s, people used to think about evolution. So let's get started and let's learn about the theories of evolution. Let's start at 1809. A book called Philosophic Zoologique, published by John Baptist de Monet Lamarck, created an uproar when he talked about evolution, which dismissed the possibility of the Almighty creating different forms of life on Earth. He talked about evolution at a time when people had not discovered gene, people had not understood the concept of genotype, chromosome, anything. This man worked on the concept and an example of giraffes. So what did he say? His theory, very popularly known as the Lamarckian theory or Lamarckism, had a few postulates. What are the postulates? First, there is always a need, an internal need felt by an organism. Second, there is, because of that need, use and disuse of organs. Third, because of use and disuse of organs, we create or we acquire new characters. 4, these characters are inherited in the next generation. And 5, that gives rise to the origin of a new species. Let's break them down one by one. He said that every organism living on Earth, because of the constraints of food and space available, feels some kind of need or the other to survive. For example, he said that this giraffe that has actually originated from a very short-necked animal, which was deer-like, faced a need to be able to reach to a higher branch, because at that point of time the population was so much that they had to compete with each other to get food from the branches or leaf from the branches of the trees as their food. So some and all of them possibly felt this need to be able to reach higher up, to reach the next branch so that they can get more food than the rest. So that is the need. It is extremely integral, intrinsic of a human being to feel needs of different kinds. Someone might feel the need of flying, someone might need the need, and when I say someone, I am talking about all plants and animals. So all organisms. So one organism might feel the need of flying. Another organism might feel the need of coming up on land. Another organism might have the need of being able to take oxygen from air. So what need is absolutely based on that organism and the conditions that they are subjected to. Second postulate, use and disuse of organs. So the moment you feel a need, you start using certain parts of your body more than the other. So when the giraffe felt this need of reaching to a higher branch, the giraffe started stretching its neck and the forelimbs so that it can be taller and it can reach higher up. The theory says that when you use an organ more, it becomes better, and when you do not use an organ very regularly, because of disuse, it becomes smaller, rudimentary or non-functional, right? Let's take a few examples. So this was one example of the giraffe that I had given. Let's say you go to the gym every day and you work out your muscles. So every day you are using certain muscles, as a result of which it is becoming bulkier, more developed. Another example would be, if you are practicing every day, your vocal cords become flexible enough to create any kind of vibration that you want to create and therefore helps you to sing. So these are all examples of use. Let me give you an example of disuse. Sometimes when you do not use an organ, it becomes non-functional. Now, a very good example is right inside our body, the vermiform appendix. This appendix was believed to be functional in our ancestors and was used in digesting cellulose from plants. But as we moved from herbivorous to carnivorous habit, we used this appendix less and less, and now that is why it is rudimentary, small and of no use. Similarly, the pinna, the muscles of the external ear in mammals, you see the elephants use them, the tigers use them. You must have seen a dog and a cat also use it, moving the pinna to collect sound. But in us, we have become, our other faculties of the brain have become so sharp that even if we do not catch the sound that precisely, we are still able to save ourselves. That is why the pinna, the movement of the pinna has been in disuse for a long time, and therefore they have become vestigial. We call these organs vestigial organs, which have become small, rudimentary or dysfunctional because of disuse. The theory is right that when you use certain organs, they become better. When you do not use certain organs, they become rudimentary. However, this is not universal. There are criticisms to the theory of use and disuse. Let me give you an example. If you are reading all the time, you are using your eyes all the time, it is more likely that you will get a power in your eyes. You will get a pair of glasses. So using your eyes is actually not making it better. It is putting pressure on your lenses and therefore increasing your chance of getting a plus power. Right? So there are several such examples which can be given to dismiss or discard the theory of use and disuse. But at that point of time, this is what Lamarck said. So first, the giraffes felt the need to stretch the neck. Then they used their neck more and forelimbs more so that they can go up. And third postulate, they acquired a character. What is this character? This character is that according to Lamarck, their neck actually became slightly longer, their forelimbs actually became slightly longer in some of them who felt the need and tried to reach. See, if there are 100 of these organisms, maybe 10 of them tried and they developed this characteristic feature. Okay? So this is called an acquired character. We all acquire characters throughout our life. You learn a certain type of dancing, that's an acquired character. You learn to swim, that's an acquired character. You are meditating, so you are increasing your lung capacity, that's an acquired character. So there are several acquired characters that we acquire throughout our life. According to Lamarck, the giraffes acquired this character and let's say 10 of them developed a slightly longer neck and a slightly longer forelimb. Fourth, inheritance of acquired character, possibly one of the most criticized postulates of Lamarck. This says that whatever characteristic you have acquired through your lifetime passes on to the next generation. So according to him, the neck of the giraffe that had stretched a little bit and become slightly taller is an acquired character, and that character passes on to the next generation. So those 10 giraffes which had longer neck will produce offsprings which will have equally longer neck. Now this is not true for all characters. We can easily understand that there are characters. For example, if you build muscles all through your life, your child will not be born with muscles. If you learn singing all your life and you are a master of singing, it is not essential that your child will be able to sing. So there are acquired characters which are not inherited. Now here there are certain controversies about this. We'll come to that later. So according to Lamarck, the giraffes felt a need. They tried to use certain organs and they acquired a character, and the character got inherited in the next generation, and this process repeated in a loop. So these new group of breed of giraffes that were formed, which has slightly taller neck, they felt the need to reach higher, and their neck, some of their necks became slightly more taller. So in the third generation you had giraffes with a slightly more taller neck. So like this, after millions of years, we saw that the first organism, the first ancestor of giraffe and the completely new giraffe that has been formed, they are so different from each other that a completely new species has been formed. And we all know that the process of creating a new species is called evolution. So the fifth postulate, that a new species is created. Now this is what Lamarckism stated. But there was a person called Weismann who tried to analyze the postulates given by Lamarck, and he discarded some of the theories and added to some of the theories to come to a possible acceptable neo-Lamarckian theory. Now you can all understand that the postulates that Lamarck has given, many of them are easily discardable. The use and disuse of organ can be discarded. Inheritance of acquired characters can be discarded. But Weismann tried to fill in the gap so that these theories can still be accepted, and we call that the neo-Lamarckian theory. Let's see what Weismann said. The theory of Lamarck, especially the theory of inheritance of acquired character, was proven to be wrong by August Weismann, a German scientist, evolutionary biologist. He was the one who performed certain experiments on mice and proved that not all acquired characters are inherited. So what he did was, he would mutilate the tail of the mice and he would show that even after not having a tail for a certain generation, those mice would produce the next generation with tail. So this proves that even the character that was acquired, that is the taillessness, was not inherited in the next generation, proving that all characters are not inherited. So what he said was his own theory of germplasm. Germplasm theory says that only those characters which have gone down into the reproductive cells or made some change in the reproductive cells can be inherited, which basically means that if any environmental factor or any of your needs or any of your use and disuse of organ has created a genetic change in your sperm or egg, only then that character will be inherited in the next generation. This is called the theory of germplasm or germplasm theory, and it also adds to Lamarckian theory to make it more enriched. So that was Lamarckism and Weismann's theory of germplasm. Now let's talk about 50 years later, another person, Charles Darwin, what he said about evolution and what his thoughts were about evolution. In 1831, Charles Darwin had started from the mainland of America in his own ship HMS Beagle and roamed around in the islands of the American group of islands called the Galapagos Islands for about 5 years. He made a few observations on this particular bird called finch, and he postulated his theory of evolution, which is known as the theory of natural selection, or as we know it, origin of species by natural selection. In 1859, his theory was published, and there was an uproar in the scientific society. Just to give you a perspective, at that point of time, Gregor Johann Mendel was also working on his theory of genetics. But he was not writing in English. Charles Darwin was. And he was popular, he was well known, he had publications, he was making presentations convincing people and the scientific world, while Gregor Johann Mendel was in Brunn working on his own little theory that nobody knew about. If at that point of time Mendel's work would have been in the light in the scientific world, maybe Charles Darwin's theory would have been even more enriched. Keeping that aside, let's move ahead and see what Charles Darwin said. His theory was the evolution of species by natural selection. What are the postulates? The first postulate is prodigality of production. The second postulate is limitation of food and space. The third postulate is competition. The fourth postulate is natural selection, and the fifth postulate is the formation of the new species. So let's start with postulate number 1. prodigality of production. He said that nature allows individuals to produce offsprings way more than what nature can actually sustain with its naturally available food and space. So, an ant couple can produce lakhs of eggs, not all of which can be sustained by earth. And the rate at which an ant couple or two elephants or two human beings can actually reproduce, if they actually survived all those offsprings, within a few years the earth will be full and completely saturated with living world. So there is always a chance given to all organisms to reproduce as much as they can to their maximum capacity. But postulate number 2, there is a limitation of food and space. I have allowed you to put in as many applications as you want for the university or the college, but I have limited number of seats available. Similarly, the earth also has limited amount of resources available for each and every species. So then what happens? Whenever the seat is limited and the applications are plenty, there is always a kind of a selection where you have to compete with each other, where you come first, second, third, and then you get the seat. So third postulate is competition, and this competition is threefold. One, a certain species fights with another species for food and space. So a tiger fighting with a lion for food and space, that doesn't really happen in nature, because tiger and lion, they are never present in the same place. But let's say a cat and a dog fighting, two different species for the same kind of food. Second, competition between same species. For example, one dog fighting with another dog for the same food and space and mate. And third, a competition with the environment. That is, an individual fighting with the environmental factors to be able to survive. We call this struggle for existence. So the moment there is lot of production but limited resources available, organisms struggle to exist, and this struggle is threefold. Just like you have 3 or 4 examinations, these are 3 or 4 kinds of tests that these organisms will have to pass through, so that eventually few of them survive. You will see a dog has possibly given a litter consisting of, let's say, 7 or 8 pups. Not all of them survive if you do not give them external care. Usually not all of them survive. Some die of diseases, some is run over by a truck, some is eaten up by some other organism, and only few survive. This is struggle for existence, where species is struggling within themselves, with other species and with the environment to be able to survive. But survival is not enough. What you have to do is you have to survive and reproduce to be able to contribute to evolution. So when you survive the struggle for existence, that brings us to the fourth postulate, that is, we say that you have been selected by nature. Darwin said that by this struggle for existence, or by putting you in that struggle for existence, you are basically allowed to make sure that you fight for your life, and the one who has the best of all the varieties survives. This he portrayed as nature in this way selects the best of the lot. Alright, this is called natural selection. After natural selection, the group of organisms that you have got, they are supposedly the best of the entire lot that was produced by prodigality of production. And these organisms, they start to reproduce again in their next generation. Since they are the naturally selected ones, they have the best of characteristic features which go on to the next generation, and there is another struggle in the next generation, which gives us another set of organisms by natural selection with even better characteristic features. And by repeating this process after hundreds of generations, you might get an organism which has characters so different from the first or the ancestral one that you say that a new species has been formed. Now here you will see that I have not mentioned survival of the fittest, because survival of the fittest was not a theory given by Darwin. When Darwin was working on his theory of natural selection, another very young scientist, Wallace, was also working on his own theory of evolution, and while working independently, he had come up with the same theory as Darwin, only that he said he did not mention about nature selecting, but he mentioned about the best or the fittest surviving. They did not have an idea about factors or genes, that Mendel was working somewhere in Austria at that point of time. Otherwise, Wallace possibly could have understood that these factors are the things that they are calling fittest. So if you have the best of factors, that is gene, you are the fittest one. So what Wallace did was, of course, Darwin was a much senior evolutionary biologist. Wallace wrote to Darwin and said that, sir, I have been working on this. This is my theory and this is my assumptions and these are my results. Darwin called Wallace and together they presented the theory. But of course, Darwin was a much well-known face at that point of time and his work overshadowed the work of Wallace. Although, if you think about it, Wallace's theory of survival of fittest is genetically more accurate than nature selecting something. You think about nature as a wise man sitting there selecting different organisms. That is not what actually happens. It is actually the best ones who win, right? So, both of them presented together, but still even today we know Darwin more than we know Wallace. Darwin's publications, Darwin's work has made him more popular than Wallace, but Wallace was the one who talked about survival of the fittest. Darwin's theory also had criticisms, but it also has amendments which gave rise to Neo-Darwinism. We are not talking about Neo-Darwinism today. But Darwin's theory definitely is one of the most accepted theories of evolution. Another 50 years later, another person, Hugo de Vries, comes up with another theory on evolution which is also commendable. What did he say? So in 1909, Hugo de Vries came forward with his theory called the mutation theory. Now there was few theories of Darwin that were criticized. One of them being, the first criticism was that Darwin kept on talking about variation. But Darwin did not state or establish where these variations came from, because he had no idea about what Mendel was doing. Now Hugo de Vries by 1901 has already studied Mendel and he was one of the independent rediscoverers of Mendel's work. So Mendel's work was republished in 1901. He was one of them. He had studied Mendel and now he knew that there was something inside the cell called a factor or a gene, which if it changes the characteristic feature, which is responsible for giving a characteristic feature. So he said for the first time that the origin of variation, something that Darwin could not establish at that point of time or reason at that point of time, are mutations. What are mutations? These are sudden changes occurring in the gene or what Mendel called factors, which gave rise to new characteristic features that we call variation. That was one problem solved. The second thing that Hugo de Vries said was that unlike how Darwin has explained evolution, that there are gradual variations coming in and giving rise to a characteristic feature, evolution does not work like that. See, a criticism of Darwin's theory was that if nature always selects the best, then how come the first individual, which instead of having fins had a lump in place of it, was selected? That lump has given rise to legs, which are better characters, fine. But the first organism did not have a well-defined limb. Maybe the fin was just replaced by a lump of mass of something. That should have been a character which is not good for its survival, because it did not have fins, neither did it have a well-developed limb. But how was that selected? Because if that did not get selected, it would not get evolved and change into a limb. So this theory that nature always selects the best does not hold good all the time. There are characters which apparently look like or apparently seem to be not so evolved characters, but they are still selected by nature. Hugo de Vries said that it is not that characteristics or variations are evolving gradually like in a continuous manner that Darwin has said. He said that characteristics are actually being formed, or variations are actually being formed suddenly or randomly or abruptly. The moment there is a change, there is a mutation, there is one character being formed. And if that character at that point of time is allowing you to survive better in your environment, then that is selected. So instead of evolution being a very mean oriented change, it is a random change in different paths. So it does not really have a fixed direction like Darwin has said. It actually had a capacity to give rise to a multi-directional way of evolving in nature. So this theory, also known as the mutation theory of Hugo de Vries, was the third theory that we were talking about today. That was all about Lamarckian and Darwinian theories. Now let me ask you a question. If you had to explain the origin of a long neck in a giraffe with the help of a Darwinian theory rather than a Lamarckian theory, how would you explain it? Do let me know your answers by putting it in the comments below. I look forward to reading your answers and promise to reply to all of them. Hope you have enjoyed the video and have learned from it. Do check out the courses on our website manochaacademy.com and our Android app Manocha Academy. Links are all given below. We have courses on physics, chemistry, biology, mathematics, coding and artificial intelligence. In these courses, you will get concept videos, live classes, quizzes, mock tests and revision notes. So, they will be perfect for your exam preparations. Do hit the like button and share the video with your friends. If you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, go ahead and smash that subscribe button right now and click on the notification bell so that you do not miss out on any of our videos. Stay connected with Manocha Academy and let's keep learning together.